This video will show you how to replace the front upper ball joint on a GMC Sierra 2500. This is part of your front steering and suspension located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we have to do is safely raise and support the front end of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've done that, if you have a hubcap, we're going to remove that. That can be done using a 22mm socket. After that, we'll remove all 8 of our 22mm lug nuts as well so we can remove the wheel. Now that we have the wheel off, let's have a close look in the center area here. We have a metal cover. We're going to dislodge this so we can make our way behind to our axle nut. For this, I'm just using a small hammerable pry bar. I want to make my way in between this area so I can separate it. There's our cover. Just a quick inspection of that. We'll set it aside. We're using a 36mm for our axle nut. There's that. Once you've removed the nut and its washer, continue on with a hammer and punch directly in the center of the front axle. I've used some penetrant to help break this free. Now, once you do have movement from the axle in comparison to the wheel bearing, we'll continue on. Now, up along the top of the knuckle, this is where we can see our ABS wheel speed sensor wire from the wheel bearing, and this is leading all the way up across the top of the upper control arm, and you're going to find it makes its way behind the front wheel well. Up along the top of the frame is where you're going to find an electrical connector. We're going to carefully dislodge it, then we're going to have to separate the electrical connector from the frame and continue on down along this way. Now, as I make my way up and along the top of the frame here, I can feel where my electrical connector is. I'm just carefully pulling up on my locking tab and I'm pressing the wiring harness away. Of course, a quick inspection along each end for corrosion is extremely important. Continuing on, we're going to separate the connector from the frame next. Gently pry it up and out of the frame. Now, sometimes the mounting point will break off. That's okay. We can try to remove that or use a wire tie as necessary. As we make our way down, we have another mounting point. Pry that out of place as well. Let's continue making our way outward up along the top of the control arm. We have another mounting point. I'm just going to use a small flat blade screwdriver for this. The locking tab is inside of this area, so I'm using a small screwdriver. We're just going to make our way in, gently pry to separate that. Inspection of that. This is looking good. Now we're just going to pry this off of this metal bracket. Let's set this cable aside. Right in the same area, we're going to dislodge the bracket, which is part of our brake flex hose. We have a 10mm mounting bolt. Quick inspection of that. Just go ahead and remove your 10mm headed mounting bolt. Now this bolt is holding our flex hose bracket in place. We have plenty of slack from our brake flex hose. Let's pay attention to the upper ball joint mounting nut. We're using an 18mm. Go ahead and remove that and then start it back on a couple threads. Now you may find that as you're attempting to loosen this, it just seems to spin, and that's due to the fact that the stud for the ball joint might be spinning inside of your steering knuckle. If that is the case, you need to carefully press down on the upper control arm and ball joint, pressing them towards that steering knuckle. So for this, I'm using a long pry bar going underneath my frame and above my control arm. At this point, you would want to leave the nut in the loosened position, but still on a couple threads. After that, you'd want to carefully tap on the steering knuckle, causing vibration, and this should want to separate. We already know that mine does already want to separate. So I'm just going to go ahead and fully remove this mounting nut, and I can release pressure from my control arm. Still got slack on that flex hose. We're not going to cause any damage. We'll lift up on the control arm and rest this down and out of our way. With that pulled down and out of the way, let's focus on removing the upper ball joint from the upper control arm. This ball joint will get pressed up and out of here. So with that said, you need a ball joint press. We're going to have a cup up along the top that goes around the outer portion of the ball joint, sitting directly on the control arm, not against the ball joint. Of course, along the top, we need to make sure that we have an adapter that we can press against. Down along the bottom, we're going to use an adapter here with the other side of our ball joint press. Now we can tell that what we are doing is working. This is exactly what we want to see. Remove that adapter and remove that ball joint press. Remove the ball joint. There it is, friend. Prior to installation of any brand new part, we'll make sure we clean and inspect our mounting area. We need to make sure we clean along the top and inside the circular port here. I'm just going to use a wire brush. Double check to make sure nothing's rotted, weak, or damaged in any way. And now it's time to install the brand new upper ball joint. Prior to installing it, remove the mounting nut and remove the protective boot. We don't want to cause any damage to this during the installation process. Now that we have the boot off of there, it's time to install the ball joint. Before we do so, just have a quick look at the ball and socket area. Now, when you look in this area, you can tell that we do have 2 grooves. That's necessary for the flexing of this ball joint. With that said, we want to make sure we have those grooves facing in and out, not forward and backward. As the suspension moves up and down, this ball joint stud will move in this direction. I'm just going to take a little bit of this grease that I had removed to show you, pack it back in there. We'll make sure we have it in the proper orientation and slide it down into the control arm. So the stud, while it's in position, will move like this. Now to press this in position, we never press in the center of the ball joint, you only press along the outer edge. So I have a small cup that fits perfectly over it. Along the bottom, of course, we need another adapter that fits around where the ball joint would come through, but it needs to only hit up against the control arm, not up against the ball joint. With all this in position, we can get our ball joint press in position as well, and we can start pressing this ball joint down into position. We'll pay attention along this area. While I still have pressure on here, I'm going to cause some vibration, just in case this needs to be settled into the proper position. Let's remove our ball joint press, confirm we're properly installed. To confirm, we're feeling all the way around the top portion of the ball joint. It needs to be completely seated up against the control arm. If it's off kilter in any way, you're going to find you have an issue. We'll just wipe down this ball joint stud, and now we have to look under this area. We have a snap ring that we need to install. Now, as we make our way underneath the control arm, looking at the ball joint, you can see that it has a groove. That's for our snap ring. To install the snap ring, you need some snap ring pliers. We're going to get this in position. You want to be careful with these. They can go flying out of position. Now, once you start installing it, you need to confirm it's properly seated. Looking at this, I can tell that I am not properly seated, so this won't be locked in the proper position. After confirming that's in place, we do still have grease inside that ball and socket. It's time for our boot. Now you need to pay attention to the boot as well. The boot will have a groove on it in one area. We want to make sure we have that facing inboard towards the center of the vehicle. Now we'll press this up onto the ball joint as far as possible. Double check to make sure it's seated, and we'll continue on reinstalling the knuckle onto the ball joint. So now what we need to do is make sure that we have our brake flex hose in the proper orientation. This bracket here will need to go up and above our steering knuckle. You don't want to have it underneath close to the axle. Aside from that, when we start bringing the steering knuckle up, we want to make sure that our axle is going through the backside of our wheel bearing and out through the outside of the wheel bearing. Let's start bringing this up, and we'll align the ball joint as well. You may find you have to adjust the control arm in one direction or the other. Since I'm going down, I'm just going to lightly pry here. We have our ball joint mounting nut. Start that in on the bottom. Just double check to make sure that your brake flex hose is in the proper positioning. As I mentioned, it needs to go up and over the knuckle, not underneath. The mounting nut started on. Let's go ahead and bottom it out. The torque for that will be 37 foot-pounds. A quick note about this, if you found that the ball joint stud was spinning on you when you were trying to tighten this, you could use a pry bar and pull down on the control arm, pressing that stud down into the knuckle. That should hold it still for you. Let's pay attention to our brake flex hose next. Up along the top of the steering knuckle, you can tell that the brake flex hose bracket has a small alignment tab, and then of course we have a port on the knuckle and on that bracket for our mounting bolt. Now we have our brake flex hose. The bracket comes underneath our upper control arm, along the inboard side and up along the top. We'll align the mounting bolt port for this as well. Start that in and snug it up. As we make our way under here, there's going to be two mounting points for our ABS wire. You'll find that you have a small circular port here. That's for the first mounting point. It's just going to line up and slide right in. There we are. The next mounting point is going to be right up along the top. Obviously, from under here, it's fairly difficult to see. Generally, you can just feel around. You're going to find another circular port, line it up, and press that in. Let's get this connected. Press it in, listen for a click, double check to make sure it's secured so you do not get an ABS wheel speed sensor light. It's time for the axle nut. We'll start with our washer. Start on this axle nut. I'm going to use a pry bar. We'll come across the studs down towards the ground at an angle. That's going to prevent this from turning on us. Now when we tighten this axle nut, we have to do it by hand. You don't want to use an impact tool, which could cause damage to the bearing. We'll snug this up and then we'll torque it. I have it bottomed out, so I'm going to torque this to 188 foot-pounds. Once you have that axle nut torqued to specification, it's time for the protective cover. We'll tap this in place using a rubber mallet. Double check to make sure it's sealed all the way around. Now one last quick inspection in this area and we can reinstall our wheel. Now it's time to reinstall that wheel. Once you have the wheel in place, start on all 8 of your 22mm lug nuts. We're going to lightly bottom them out. We'll get the wheel safely back down on the ground and then torque each of them to 140 foot-pounds. Now I've got the wheel back on the ground. Let's go ahead and torque each of these lug nuts to 140 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. torqued. If you have a center cover, install that now. We'll get this in place. We're using our 22mm socket to lightly bottom these out. Double check to make sure it's secured in place. Okay friend, we finished our installation. Now the next thing you want to do is take your vehicle for a road test. Make sure you have no ABS light and get yourself a 4-wheel alignment. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.